How's it going, guys? I'm Robert from Machado Visuals, and I hope you had a great holiday. As 2022 comes to a close, I always like reflecting on how the year went, how many days I worked on set, what gear was most profitable, and what were certain trends. And part of that was realizing what kit was most useful for me on set. Now, that doesn't always equate to being profitable, but all tools don't necessarily have to make money to benefit your workflow. I always like seeing all the little knickknacks other filmmakers are using, and it's been great seeing some of your videos floating around YouTube. So here's some of my top kit of 2022. All right, so starting off with the Hollyland C1 headsets, I use these things pretty much all the time. Hollyland initially sent out a set of 4 for me to review, but I ended up liking them so much that I bought 4 additional headsets as well as their hub. To me, the sound quality is night and day difference compared to the ear techs, and although they're more sensitive to your breathing or ambient noise, it actually works in my favor since I can literally whisper into the mic and communicate with my camera operators while we're actually recording. This is particularly useful for docs or any other projects where we're not guaranteed a second take. I really like the hub compared to the ear techs because you can power it off a gold mount battery or 2 MPF batteries, and it lasts all day, so I can just set it and forget it, and I never have to worry about constantly swapping batteries. The ear tech hub is attached to a wired headset, and nobody ever wants to carry that around, so having a self-contained unit that I can just leave on my cart is perfect. Another kind of neat feature is the ability to use it as an audio input when you plug it into a computer. So it's actually how I record my comms for my Patreon videos, so you can get a little bit of insight on some of the collaborative conversations that we have on set.
3, 2, 1, action. Coming around, line. I'm being healthy.
All right, this next one is a bit of a cop-out, but it's another one of those tools that I just use on literally every set, and it's my light meter and my color meter. Light meters seem to be waning off a bit, but I absolutely love using mine to judge exposure. Most people just use a waveform or false color, and I actually use those tools all the time, but when I want to specifically quantify light, I'll always resort to using my light meter. It's particularly useful when I'm trying to judge exposure, when I'm using NDs, or if I'm trying to light an entire area to a specific stop without having to constantly run back and forth to the monitor and check levels. I always feel much better about asking my gaffer to adjust the intensity of a light to a specific number rather than just saying, that looks good. My color meter gets just as much use so that I can quantify color in the field rather than just eyeing it. I'll often use it to take an ambient reading and then replicate that exact color for my key or to extend room tone. Lately, it's been helpful matching different units via gels. If we're running LEDs from different manufacturers, they'll often have a slight deviation in color, which is super easy to correct when the meter tells me literally exactly what gels I need to match. Next up is a recent purchase, and it's actually a piece of software that's called Calman Ultimate. It's basically the quintessential calibration software to make sure that your monitors are true to color. Manufacturers actually use Calman to verify their displays at the factory and usually include a calibration report to validate that their display has been optimized. This one was a little bit of a tough pill to swallow once you see the price tag. It's absolutely amazing how different your monitor will look once it's properly calibrated, and just having all my on-set monitors not only look the same but accurate makes it entirely worth it. It's pretty easy nowadays to get into improper viewing habits with ultra bright displays, and you often end up shooting yourself in the foot when you make exposure and color decisions off an uncalibrated monitor because those decisions you're making are essentially based off a lie.
No, the lie detector determined that was a lie.
This also applies to monitors included with your camera. Even the EVF on the Mini LF looks wildly different from a calibrated monitor. The FX9 monitor is especially egregious, and I try avoiding that thing at all costs. Now that my monitors are all properly calibrated, I don't feel guilty whenever I'm making an exposure decision off the monitor. A full calibration takes about an hour and 15 minutes, but you can also create what's called a lightning LUT that takes about 3 minutes and creates a highly accurate calibration if you're short on time or even on set. The great thing about Calman is that it's compatible with a lot of the consumer probes that you might already have from X-Rite or Datacolor. The only downside is that their software is Windows only, so I just bought a separate productivity laptop to run as a dedicated machine. I might do a more in-depth video on Calman in the future, but it's already made a world of difference now that I can finally trust my monitors. So this one's kind of another cop-out, but it has to be the FX3. I've had the A7S III since it released, but I only just recently side graded to a few FX3s this year, and they're absolute rippers. The image that comes out of that little camera always blows me away, and it cuts seamlessly with all my other Sony cameras. It's able to accommodate so many different applications that larger bodies just couldn't. You can throw it on a gimbal, rig it overhead, mount it on go-karts, or just keep things low-key with a really tiny cinema camera. The camera definitely has a few shortcomings, but it's still an amazing tool for what it is. Another one of my favorite additions is the EcoFlow power station that I recently did a video on. These have been great to just leave on the cart to power anything from the camera to smaller batteries that need charging. If I have my laptop set up on my cart for media managing, I can just plug it straight into the USB-C port, so I don't have to park the cart next to an outlet or bother my gaffer for an extra stinger. I really like using these as a cheap alternative to block batteries whenever I want to power the camera for longer periods and not burn through my standard camera batteries. For reference, the Delta Mini can power my Mini LF for about 10 hours, and it's super useful during prep so the camera and accessories can both stay on while I'm building the camera. My favorite feature of these power stations are how insanely fast they charge. I'll usually leave one plugged in during lunch, and by the time we get back, it's ready to swap out. Again, I want to reiterate how bonkers it is that it's able to charge 900 watt hours in only an hour and a half. After about 800 cycles, it drops to about 80% capacity, and spread across 2 units, these will last me a long time. Hopefully this video is helpful in some way. There are a few honorable mentions like the Mac Studio or my trusty van, but I'm actually making a more in-depth year in review video for my Patreon, as well as other exclusive behind-the-scenes content if you're interested in checking that out. I'd love to hear about the gear that's made your life easier, as well as any personal trends or goals that you might have for the upcoming year. It's always great hearing other people's perspectives to improve workflow efficiency on set. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Good. Yeah, I like it. Cool. I feel warm inside.
That makes me feel warm.
We're all warm.
I'm gonna be real warm with you doing I'm fascinated with camera gear.
Me too. Oh, was it playing? Yeah.